Hi, welcome to Brick and Mortar, education from the inside out. I'm your host, Matt Gresick.
And I'm Eric Ebersole.
We're here to talk today about education. We're both teachers, and for instance, we're going to go through our whole interview process today, and we're going to interview each other. So my first question is to Eric. Who are you, and why did you choose education?
So I'm a 35-year retired high school math teacher. And I spent a lot of time in the classroom, never went into administration. And somewhere around my 32nd or 33rd year, I discovered that the local legislators in my area were all going to retire, and I saw an opportunity to run for the legislature and be an advocate for education. I had help from my co-host here today. Matt was super helpful, and I got elected to the legislature, where I am a tireless advocate for public education, and I think I have some very good insights about law and policy.
Yeah, you do. Which is why we're doing this.
And Matt, what tell me about you a little bit.
All right, so I'm a teacher. This is going into my 21st year teaching social studies. I taught 2.5 years middle school and the rest high school. I'm also a dad of 3 healthy kids, and I am the National Education Association and the Maryland State Education Association director. So we've got I think over a half a century of education experience between us.
Yeah, I contribute a little larger percentage of that than you do, just for the record.
Yeah, but I think you were using a rotary phone back then.
Yes, it was a little slower
the
getting
Green
through.
Book was still popular.
That's true. Yellow pages to find things, actually, in those days. We did, yes, indeed.
So let's continue on this. I'm going to ask you the question number 2. What's your most difficult, challenging, funniest, or most rewarding moment in education? In other words, what event sticks out in your memory the most?
So there's one from the very early time of my education, and I'm sure during the course of this podcast I'll share many more experiences. But in the early part of my education as a math teacher, I felt it was important to show students the derivations of formulas, not just give them formulas. And later on, I learned I was right when we got to the Common Core, that actually that was very important to have students understand the arrival at formulas and not just a bunch of algorithms. And so I'd spent in a trig class a great deal of time proving something. And it turns out I had made a mistake in the early part of the proof. It was last period. And we recognized the proof with about 2 minutes to go in class. And I tried to go back and fix it. And the bell rang. And the school was emptying out. And kids were getting ready to go to their buses. And I looked very exasperated. And a voice from the back of the classroom said, "No, go ahead, finish it." Okay. And they all sat there while the school was emptying out and gave me another minute to finish that proof and show them what I wanted to show them. It made me feel like they valued what I was doing, and I've never forgotten that moment.
Awesome.
How about you, Matt?
What do you got? I'm going to go with the funniest moment here because I remember doing a review with kids, and we had, they all split up in this really smart group of kids, intelligent, hardworking group of kids. They had the name OFF. And I was OFF off.
My God.
And so I was like, what? Okay. And then they just started losing on purpose. And I knew they were losing on purpose. I knew they weren't doing their best. And they kept on edging each other going, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And so I was like, at Team Alpha in first place, team, this in second place. And I guess everybody's beating.
They set you up.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to grade them with an F, and they would have been F off.
And now the rating of our podcast has gone to an R.
Right, exactly. For mature audiences only. Yes. There you go. Just like that.
So the third question, which leads us to a very important topic for our state. So excited about this. What, Delegate Ebersole, are your insights on the blueprint for Maryland's future?
So it's a great name, the blueprint for Maryland's future. It's nice when you have an omnibus and generationally changing bill to give it a name that really indicates what it is. And so because children are our future, this blueprint is a bill based on something called the Kirwan Commission. And we'll talk about that in a moment or two. But it's based on their recommendations. We made significant changes to education for the next 10 years. And people say, well, how's the blueprint working? And the answer is, it's just starting to work. And the blueprint has a number of very important things in it. And I'll address them generally for you here. First of all, it pumps up pre-K and childcare. There's not a study in the world that says we shouldn't start teaching kids when they're 2, 3, even birth, but 2, 3, 4 years old, and begin to educate them and put them in situations where they really have tasks to overcome. It also has more emphasis on career and technical education because that's a direction many students want to go. College isn't automatically the end-all and be-all for students. Many students will take that path. But one of the things I like about the blueprint the most is that it creates a career pathway for teachers other than going into administration. It sets up teachers to be expert teachers and spend some time in the classroom and some time traveling to other schools and giving advice and rating and looking at other schools and seeing how they're doing. I never wanted to leave the classroom, but my only choice was to be a department chair and get one free period, which I did, but that wasn't really doing a lot of administration. That was mostly buying books and ordering rulers and things like that. I was a math teacher, but the other option was to go into administration and leave the classroom entirely, and I didn't want to do that. I would have loved to have been able to be put in a situation where I could lend my expertise, and the blueprint has that in it. And so there's a lot of other features of the blueprint. I've sold it short. It's a 200-page bill. There's a lot of things in it, but I was one of the people who got to defend parts of that bill, specifically the early childhood part. In the legislature, I am the chair of the Early Childhood Subcommittee of Ways and Means, and I defended that part of the bill, and probably was my most productive and exciting day on the floor.
Awesome.
And what about you? What do you think about the blueprint from a classroom perspective? Because I'm in the legislature, wasn't in the classroom. Matt is currently a social studies teacher,
yes,
as you know. And so from the classroom perspective and from that perspective, what do you think about
Well, I started to get lost in your story about buying stuff as a department chair, and I was just thinking about buying that thing that makes the perfect circle. What was that called?
Yeah, the thing that makes the perfect circle.
Yes.
It's called a compass.
Yeah, I couldn't think of the name.
Why do we give it a funny name? Why don't we just call it the thing that makes it perfect? I used to, in my classroom, I used to tie a piece of string to a piece of chalk, and I would use that to draw a perfect circle on my board. Okay.
Yeah, but anyways, I'm excited because we have so many kids in this state that come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And the blueprint is really trying to build in that infrastructure, trying to build in that enthusiasm for reaching those kids and getting to them in a real and meaningful way. The community school model works. It just works. And the blueprint will fund that to the hilt. And I am excited about that so that those kids, those communities can realize their fullest potential. I'm
glad you mentioned that because the blueprint does target areas of concentrations of poverty in the state. Let's be clear. Poverty is often concentrated, and it is here in Maryland, and it is in many parts of the country, I know. And so this says areas of concentration of poverty need, and you've touched on the other major point of the blueprint, that it established community schools, and we'll probably do an entire episode on community schools sometime in the future. Yes. It talks about how community schools are more than just providing after school tutoring. They are about responding to the entire needs of the community, and it's a very good thing.
Oh, what is that?
Wow, I think that's a phone call, Matt.
I think it is.
We must have a listener who has a question. Let's find out what it is, shall we? Hello there, listener. How are you doing today?
I am doing just fine, thank you.
Tell us your name, please, listener.
My name is Tara Ebersole.
What a coincidence.
Ebersole.
Crazy.
That's my last name, too.
I know.
Well, there are Ebersoles around. It's good to know. It's nice to know that there are Ebersoles who have good questions. Do you have a question for us for what we've been talking about?
I sure do. I want to know what the difference is between Kerwin and Thornton and Blueprint. We got all these names bandying about, and I don't know what the difference is.
Well, caller, thank you so much for that question. It's so relevant and so important. So many people are confused by that, and I even made a reference to it earlier, and we weren't entirely clear about it. Yep. Matt, do you want to start off by talking about them a little bit?
Well, for me, I do it in reference from when I came into education over 20 years ago. I remember working in a Title I school and how they discussed how there was Kerwin money still left over to help out with the Title I school and those lower schools that had a majority of kids farms. But now it's even more so to help out in funding of those areas. So that's where I would like to.
And the names that what was her name again? Tara?
Tara.
Yes,
I
the
believe
names
Tara.
that Tara suggested are all different things. Thornton is actually something that's historical. It was a similar omnibus bill for education in the early 2000s to really do a lot of funding. Now, in the Thornton bill that got passed, it required us after about 15 to 20 years to revisit. And so the Kirwan Commission is actually just a commission that met and made recommendations for education on some of the things we've talked about. Kirwan is not the bill. The bill is called the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. The Blueprint for Maryland's Future bill is a response to the recommendations that Kirwan made. So Kirwan made some recommendations. We followed most of them, but when it came down to it, we had to look about the amount of money things cost and what we could afford and what we could manage. And so there were some tamping downs, and there were some places where we extended even further than the Kirwan Commission recommended. So a lot of people call it Kirwan. That's really an old name for it because that was the name of the commission. The Blueprint for Maryland's Future is actually the bill and actually the legislation that's taking place. Hey, caller, thank you so much for that question. We really appreciate you coming on board for that.
All right, so let's go to the next question. What is the biggest misconception people outside the school building have about what happens day to day?
Okay, you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
You can start. You know what? I'll go first.
Okay.
The biggest misconception I think people have is that I hate it when people are saying, "Well, we're just gonna not throw money at education." I have never, in my 2 decades of experience, ever felt that we have an overabundance of funding. Ever. It's and I feel like when people say that, I just picture them, just throwing money at us, and like we're just swimming in it, and it's never been like that. We constantly strive to write grants and for students and do our best to stretch a dollar as best we can for our kids. So that's where I would come from.
And I agree with you, Matt. I really resent that image of like a marionette person sprinkling dollars down over your head. And the very things we've talked about in the blueprint were things that cost money, but that was very focused money.
Yeah.
The money for pre-K, the money for community schools, the money for CTE.
Mm-hmm.
These were things that were specific. We weren't just saying, here, take some money and I hope it works out. And we also have very measurable devices in the blueprint. There is an accountability board that is established to make sure that school systems are doing what they should be. Yeah. And so we are taking it quite seriously. Yeah. So Matt went for policy, even though he's the teacher. Yeah. I'm going to go for teacher, even though I'm the policy guy. One of the things that I think worries me about education, especially here post-COVID, is that people labor under the belief that if you give them a huge task, a teacher, a huge task, something that is cumbersome and maybe not even related to their teaching, that they'll do it because it's good for the children. And the answer is, yeah, they probably will. But the danger is, and the misconception is that those teachers will continue to be teachers ad nauseum and in perpetuity. And they won't. Eventually, we'll chase the teachers out. Teachers are like a piece of sandpaper. They'll work real hard for a while, but if you keep overusing them, you'll wear them down, and they won't be able to do the job they're supposed to do.
The compassion fatigue.
Right, there it is.
Profession.
You gotta love Matt. Matt's always got great terms for stuff. I say like 80 words, and he says compassion fatigue, and he's got it right there. We do care about students, but we also need to make sure that we keep teachers happy, we keep them relaxed, we keep them able to actually do their jobs. And the misconception is that it's fine, they'll do it, they love kids.
Well, to be a martyr is unfortunately a lot of times the natural inclination of many educators. And we also need to move away from that and seeing them as people too.
Okay, so the last one's a funny question that we're going to ask our guests every time. Yes. I don't know that we'll answer this question every time.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to say, if either the high school you went to, if you're currently an elementary or a middle school teacher, or the high school that you're teaching at, what would you have had the mascot be rather than what it actually is? And that's an easy question because we have the same answer.
I know, exactly. The exact same answer. We should have, Reservoir High School should have easily been the Reservoir Retrievers instead of the Reservoir Gators. And then, of course, it would have easily became the Reservoir Dogs.
The Reservoir Dogs.
And we would have been the coolest mascot in all of Howard County.
It would have also only been a mascot for mature audiences, but Reservoir Dogs.
A lot of people would show up in suits and sunglasses, and it would have been very nice.
A great reference to the movie.
Yes,
I know. I don't know that I can think of a better one, but maybe we'll do it for our high schools next time and see what we can come up with.
Yeah. But that concludes our show. This is Matt Gresick signing off.
I'm Eric Ebersole.
And that's all.
I hope you've enjoyed yourself listening to us. Come back again for the next episode.